Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi' al-huda. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters in Islam. Welcome to another session and lesson about تحقيق الاتباع لنبينا المعصوم وإبطال التقليد الأعمى والتحزب والتعصب المذموم. We welcome all of you to another discussion and lesson about how we manifest and truly realized true emulation and imitation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and remove harmful sectarianism and partisanship and blind following and fanaticism to madhabs and certain personalities. In our previous discussion and lecture, we talked about some of the causes and consequences of bigotry, blind following, and partisanship. So today we're going to go a little bit more into some of the asbab at-ta'assub al-madhhabi, some of the causes of bigotry towards certain madhabs, sects, or personalities. Okay, some of the causes of sectarian bigotry. So we're going to start off reading from a great book which was authored by Imam al-Shawkani called Adab al-Talab wa Muntaha al-Arab, okay, where he mentions, okay, some of the causes or some of the things which lead people, lead Muslims and students of knowledge and many times scholars to leave the circle of insaf, okay, the circle of justice and fairness, and enter into the bubble and cocoon of blind following, bigotry, and partisanship. So he goes on to say, he says, وَاعْلَمْ أن سبب الخروج عن دائرة الإنصاف والوقوع في موبقات التعصب كثيرة جدا. فمنها, he says, and know and be informed that the reasons and causes for abandoning fairness and justice that leads to falling into the destructive perils of sectarian bigotry and partisanship are very great and numerous. Amongst them are فمنها النشوء في بلد متمذهب بمذهب معين وهو أكثرها وقوعا وأشدها بلاء أن ينشأ طالب العلم في بلد من البلدان التي قد تمذهب أهلها بمذهب معين واقتدوا بعالم مخصوص، وهذا الداء قد طبق في بلاد الإسلام وعم أهلها ولم يخرج عنه إلا أفراد، قد يوجد الواحد منهم في المدينة الكبيرة وقد لا يوجد، لأن هؤلاء الذين ألفوا هذه المذاهب قد صاروا يعتقدون أنها هي الشريعة، وأن ما خرج عنها خارج عن الدين مباين لسبيل المؤمنين، كل حزب بما لديهم فرحون. فأهل هذا المذهب يعتقدون أن الحق بأيديهم وأن غيرهم على الخطأ والضلال والبدعة، وأهل المذهب الآخر يقابلونهم بمثل ذلك. He said the first cause is being raised in a land or country in which people fiercely and bigotry and fanatically adhere to one particular madhab, one particular school of thought. And this is one of the most frequent occurrences and the most severe afflictions, that a student of knowledge grows up in a country or amongst people whose inhabitants have already adopted and adhered to a certain madhab, and they follow a particular scholar. This sickness has occurred in many of the lands of Islam and spread amongst its people. Only few individuals, perhaps in large cities, escape from these webs of bigotry and partisanship. And this is because those who formulated these madhabs have become to believe that this is the Sharia, that their madhabs are the divine law, and whoever departs from it is outside of the deen and opposed to the path of the believers. As Allah says in the Quran, every party rejoices in what they follow or what they adhere to. So the adherents of this madhab believe that the truth is in their hands alone and that others are in error, misguidance, and innovation, and those of the other madhabs reciprocate similarly. The second reason, the second cause that Imam Shawkani, he says that people leave off and abandon fairness, okay, and is a cause of fanaticism and the evil consequences of fanaticism. Okay, he says, حب الشرف والمال ومداراة أهل الوجاهة والسلطان والتماس ما عندهم فيقوي ما يناسبهم ولا ينصف. He said the love of honor and wealth and ingratiation with and towards the people of influence, towards the people of luxury and authority and power, and seeking what they have from status and wealth. So the student or the blind follower or the bigoted one to particular madhabs or scholars agree with everything that they say and remain silent upon the denounceable things solely to win the approval of the rich, the influential, or those who have status and power, and they are not fair and they do not do justice. They do not have insaf. The third cause, Imam Shawkani mentions, الخوض في الجدال والمراء مع أهل العلم والتعرض للمناظرات وطلب الظهور والغلبة فيقوي تعصبه لما أيده ولا ينصف. He says engaging in disputes and debates with the people of knowledge, participating in constant debates and disputations, and seeking fame and dominance, in which he only seeks to strengthen his own sect, his own group, his own party, or his own group of particular scholars in what supports them. And so this leads him to be unfair and he does not do justice. He supports all of those who support his scholars and doesn't support or aid those who do not support his particular scholars. The fourth thing that Imam Shawkani mentions from the Asbab al-Ta'assub are الميل لمذهب الأقرباء والبحث عن الحجج المؤيدة له للمباهاة بغلم أقربائه فيتعصب حتى لخطئهم ولا ينصف. He says the inclination to the madhab and ways and schools of thought of one's relatives, of one's cousins, of one's brothers, fathers, sons, and the likes, and searching for arguments in their favor for the sake of both about one's relatives. So for his ones who are close to him, his relatives and those in his group and sect, he always finds excuses for them. But those who are in other sects or not from his relatives or not from those who are close to him, he doesn't find excuses for them. So one becomes bigoted even for the errors and mistakes of his own people and relatives and is not fair and does not do justice. The fifth cause, Imam Shawkani, he says, الحرج من الناس في الرجوع عن فتوى قالها أو قول أيده واشتهر عنه ثم تبين بطلانه فيتعصب دفعا للحرج ولا ينصف. He says embarrassment or humiliation in front of people in retracting a fatwa or a verdict or a statement or a view that one has affirmed, which has become known and popular, but then it becomes clear that it is false and incorrect. So one becomes bigoted to his old and incorrect statement, and because his worry of being embarrassed or his worry of being humiliated, right, does not recant his statement to avoid embarrassment, and he is not fair and does not deal with himself or others with justice. The sixth cause, Imam Shawkani goes on to mention, he says, الزلة في المناظرة مع من هو أصغر سنا أو أقل علما شهرة تجعله يتعصب للخطأ ولا ينصف. He says, a slip or an error in disputation or debate with someone younger or less learned than him, but because he is famous and because he is popular, he doesn't want to recant his statement or admit he made a mistake, right? And this makes him cling fanatically to his error and not be fair and not be just. Number 7, from the causes of a ta'assub al-madhhabi, Imam Shawkani, he goes on to say, التعلق بقواعد معينة يصحح ما وافقها ويخطئ ما خالفها وهي نفسها غير مسلمة على الإطلاق فيتعصب بالبناء عليها ولا ينصف. He says attachment and bigotry to certain invented rules or principles or qawa'id, so that he approves everything that agrees with them and deems incorrect everything and everyone that contradicts those principles and rules, although those rules themselves are not absolutely accepted, nor proofs or evidences in the Sharia. They are not indisputably established. So he becomes bigoted to them by building, right, his deen upon them, building his methodology and ideology upon them, and he does not do justice and is unfair with people and others. So whoever agrees with the principles that he established, okay, from his ijtihad, those are his allies. And whoever disagrees with those principles that he established that do not have decisive evidence from the Quran and Hadith and understanding of the Salaf, then he is from his enemies. Number 8, from amongst the causes of ta'assub al-madhhabi that Imam Shawkani mentioned, he says, اعتماد أدلة الأحكام من كتب المذاهب لأنه سيجد ما يؤيد المذهب باستبعاد دليل المخالف فيتعصب ولا ينصف. He said reliance on the evidences for legal rulings and verdicts solely from the books of the different schools of jurisprudence, because he finds what supports his particular madhab while excluding the opposing proofs and evidences from other madhabs, therefore becoming bigoted to his particular madhab, and this leads him to being unfair and unjust. Also, from the causes of at-ta'assub al-madhhabi that Imam Shawkani mentions, and this is very apparent amongst many of our brothers who ascribe to the Quran and Sunnah in the West. He says, الاعتماد في الجرح والتعديل على كتب المتعصبين إذ يعدلون الموافق ويجرحون المخالف فمن بنى على كتبهم يتعصب ولا ينصف. Relying on the books of al-jarh wa ta'dil, praising and criticizing narrators and biographies and the likes, exclusively written by those who may be bigoted, those who may be sectarian, those who may be blind following, and those who may be fanatical to a particular madhab or a particular scholar. So they praise those who agree with them and criticize those who disagree with them. So whoever builds their deen and builds their methodology upon their books eventually becomes sectarian and bigoted and does not do justice and is not fair. Number 10, from the causes of a ta'assub al-madhhabi, التنافس بين المتقاربين في الفضيلة أو منزلة قد يدفع أحدهما لتخطئة الثواب الآخر تعصبا ومجانبة للإنصاف. Competition of those close in virtue or status may drive one individual to fault something correct or valid from another person out of his bigotry towards a certain madhab or bigotry towards a certain personality, and this leads him to neglecting fairness and justice. And lastly, from the causes of a ta'assub al-madhhabi that Imam Shawkani mentions is al-i'timadu ala al-ara wal-aqwal min ilm al-ra'i المخلوطة بعلوم الاجتهاد كأصول الفقه مما يترتب عليه التعصب للرأي وخروج عن الإنصاف. انتهى كلامه ملخصا رحمه الله تعالى. He said, reliance on opinions and statements from ilm al-ra'i, from the science of opinions and views, mixed with the disciplines of ijtihad such as usul al-fiqh, jurisprudence maxims, which many times results in sectarianism and bigotry for that particular opinion and leads one to abandoning fairness and justice. So, brothers and sisters, reflecting upon these extremely important statements of Imam Shawkani and what we have learned in our discussions and lessons about al-Itibaa, we can subdivide the causes of sectarian bigotry, ta'assub al-madhmum, which was widespread throughout the Muslim lands, throughout history, into two categories. Fundamental causes of sectarian bigotry, partisanship, blind following, and ta'assub, and secondary causes. And the fundamental causes of a ta'assub al-madhhabi, we can focus into three main causes. Firstly, failure to uphold correctly and completely to the deen of Islam in all aspects, in feelings, ideas, behavior, creed, and jurisprudence. Because our noble deen is built upon justice, al-adl, and equality, and balance, and moderation, and not upon extremism, not upon exaggeration, nor upon bigotry towards or for falsehood or anything fallible. The different sects and parties that fell into despised sectarian bigotry deviated from the wise and just Sharia and did not adhere to it wholeheartedly or sincerely. Second, the nature of some of the ideologies and doctrines and creeds that made up some of the sectarian ideological madhabs, some of them have foundations that do not promote blind following or bigotry, while the majority of them have most of their foundations based upon falsehood, extremism, inducing exaggeration, and blind bigotry, as in the madhabs of the majority, if not all, of Ahlul Kalam, from the Mu'tazila, the Jahmiyyah, okay, the Asharis, the Maturidis, right, and other sects from amongst the Shia, the Sufis, the Kharijis, the Quraniyin, and many of the other sects that left the main body of Muslims and emerged after the time of Uthman ibn Affan and Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. And the third primary cause was the reactions of the sectarian and bigoted followers in their interaction with their madhabs and other madhabs, both moderate and extreme. And it is natural that one promotes and defends their own school of thought, their own madhab. But these reactions differ according to their doctrinal motivations and the natures of people's souls, also their intellectual and physical capacities, and also their surrounding social circumstances. So, whoever is guided by right, good, moderate, moral, just, fair reactions founded upon proper Islamic principles, upright Islamic manners and etiquette, and Islamic fundamentals and teachings, then in many cases, some of their actions can be considered legitimate, okay, especially if it's in defending the truth or defending a correct opinion. And whoever's reactions are malevolent, based on distorted false principles, distorted ta'wil of the Quran and the Sunnah and the understanding of the companions, these are illegitimate actions that aim, in most cases, at defending falsehood and defending reprehensible bigotry and blind following. As for the secondary causes, they are like assisting factors that lead to and support the primary causes of bigotry, blind following, sectarianism, and partisanship, and others that came up from the interactions amongst social phenomena and societal issues and circumstances. And all of them contributed to the spread of sectarian bigotry, the spread of blind following, and the spread of fanaticism to madhabs and personalities, and its intensification and widening of its circle. The first was the negative role played by many sectarian, bigoted, and fanatical students of knowledge, some scholars, and some imams. They are those who called to this sectarian bigotry, blind following. They spread it, defended it, and encouraged it, and participated in it. And these actions were negative contributions that only ignited and spread more blind following, more partisanship, more bigotry, and it did not restrain it nor reduce it at all. Secondly, the negative stance and position of many of the caliphs, many of the kings, and their assistants in dealing with the phenomenon of sectarian bigotry, blind following, and group party. Many of them did not strive to rid themselves of it, nor did they manage it well. And they adopted madhabs for themselves and became bigoted to them and supported them at the expense of other madhabs in words and deeds. Their actions thereby became negative participation that entrenched and spread the flames of partisanship, sectarian bigotry, blind following to certain madhabs and certain personalities. Another reason, the negative actions by many sectarian and bigoted preachers and teachers and admonishers. They utilize their positions on the manabir, in the mihrabs, and in their jobs as teachers and in institutions to spread sectarian bigotry, fanaticism, and blind following, and encourage fitan and clashes amongst the various Islamic schools of jurisprudence. And there are very many evidences of that throughout Islamic history, especially what we mentioned throughout our previous lectures and lessons. Also, another reason, secondary reason, which led to a ta'assub al-madhabi is the madhabizing or adhering to a particular madhab of the common and lay Muslims. When the masses adopted and strictly adhered to the madhabs, blind follow one particular madhab, blind follow one particular imam, they became bigoted for their madhabs alone out of ignorance and recklessness, coupled with blind partisanship incited by their scholars, notables, and rulers who were themselves sectarian. Those common people became the fuel for bloody sectarian conflicts that occurred amongst many of the different jurisprudence madhabs throughout time, as we mentioned in our previous talks. Also, one of the secondary causes of a ta'assub al-madhabi is the prevalence, the fabrication, and spreading of weak and fabricated ahadith amongst the different madhabs, containing or serving as confirmations for their disagreements, their dissensions and alienation, such as the hadith, ikhtilafu ummati rahma, the diversity or differing in opinion within my ummah is a mercy. And as we know, brothers and sisters, this hadith is not authentic. And many of the sectarian bigots and blind followers of specific madhabs have exploited it and misused it excessively to support their bigotry, to support their blind following, and to support their circumstances and situations, and used it as a proof to entrench sectarian divisions and sectarian fanaticism, bigotry, and blind following. Also, from the causes is the remaining of many disputed issues, foundational and jurisprudential between the different madhabs as they are, without a fair, sincere scholarly investigation to remove their differences, because of many bigoted fanatics have striven to preserve their madhabs alone while arguing and defending solely them, even if their evidences are weak, even if their evidences are abrogated, even if their evidences are fabricated or not based upon correct extraction from the texts. This has led to the increase of sectarian loyalty and encouragement of it, defending it, and keeping questions of disagreement and debates alive up until this day in the year 2025. Also, from the causes is the sectarian and bigoted followers of particular madhabs. Are they themselves violating the statements of the four Imams? May Allah have mercy upon all of them and be pleased with them. Violating and going against the statements of Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, and Imam Ahmad. When they forbid blind following, they forbid taqleed of them and sectarian allegiance and ta'assub to their views without proofs and evidences. These sectarian and bigoted followers are contradictory in their stance. They imitate their imams and become bigoted in their favor, rightly or wrongly, even though their imams prohibited blind following and sectarianism. And on the day of resurrection, the day that people stand before their Lord, the Lord of the worlds, those imams will disassociate from them on the day when we all stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. Also, from the causes is that distinction of each sect from the others by their schools of thought, by their sheikhs, by their students, by their ethnicity, by their heritage, by their mosques in their neighborhoods and communities. This strange situation further entrenched sectarianism and sectarian loyalty very deeply, making them a recognized societal and authoritative reality. And also, brothers, from the causes, the secondary causes of a ta'assub al-madhabi is the negative role of the judiciary courts throughout Islamic countries and throughout Islamic history in its dealings with the jurisprudence madhabs and favoritism towards some while not having justice and fairness towards others. When the judiciary court or judges were following a single madhab, it would rule only according to that madhab adopted by the state or the government, and all the other jurisprudence madhabs had to submit to the state and governmental madhab whether they liked it or not. This condition generated in the people, in many of the lay Muslims and common Muslims, as well as many scholars, sectarian loyalty to their madhab alone as a protection from extinction and bigotry towards the state imposed madhab. And also The official madhab of the state enabled its adherents to use their influence in state apparatus to spread it, to strengthen it, and be bigoted towards its opponents. And this situation only produced more bigotry, blind following amongst all the jurisprudence madhabs. And when the judiciary courts became pluralistic, right, using all of the four schools of thought, the situation still did not change in terms of sectarian bigotry. It entrenched further division and partisanship and opened the arena for bigoted judges of the four madhabs to exploit their influence in only serving their madhabs and being bigoted and blind following, right, only their madhab and being bigoted against those who differed with them. Thus, brothers and sisters, it should be clearly evident from what we have mentioned, from amongst these causes, both the fundamental and secondary, are what lay behind the phenomenon of sectarian bigotry, blind following, group partisanship, and fanaticism to madhabs and personalities. So, my question to myself and to all of you, is there any way to rid ourselves of these phenomenon in our present time? So in our upcoming talk and discussion, we are going to talk about what are some of the proposed solutions and treatments of the phenomenon of sectarian bigotry, ta'assub, blind following, taqlid al-a'ma, and fanaticism and partisanship. So hopefully everybody benefited from what we talked about today. We read some statements of Imam Shawkani, and we also talked about the fundamental and secondary causes of at-ta'assub al-madhabi. May Allah Azza wa Jal unite us upon the Quran and the Sunnah, upon the understanding of the righteous predecessors, and keep us far away from sectarian bigotry, partisanship, and fanatical blind following. جزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.